if you have, 20 grand in the bank and a family and 2 dogs and, 4 kids, and you're strapped on time and you have very little capital and you have a full-time job, going and building ground up construction apartment buildings in LA probably is not going to suit you and your resources and your cash and who you know. So invest in the thing that makes the most amount of sense for you today.
Welcome to the Bulletproof Cashflow podcast. Let's get into the show.
Hey everyone, this is Agostino. If you've been wanting to get into real estate investing someday, well, now is the time to act. It's never too late to get in, and one man has proven that it's never too early to get into the real estate game. Now, today's guest, he got his start while still in college. And once he learned about real estate investing, he knew that that was his calling. Now, from his dorm room, he completed his first BRRRR project out of state by borrowing 40 grand from his dad. And now today, he and his family have completed over 250 real estate projects and currently have about $14 million in real estate portfolio. He is the author of the book, A Millennial's Guide to Investing in Cash Flowing Rental Properties. And he is also rated one of the top 20 real estate investors to watch in 2020 by Yahoo Finance. Now, with all that, I'd like to welcome my good friend, Antoine Martel to the show. Antoine, thanks for coming on, bud.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. Excited to be here.
It's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. Now, if you like what Antoine has to say, you can reach him via his contact page at martelturnkey.com. If you like our content, please don't forget to leave a comment and rate the show. It helps us out tremendously when you do. Finally, if you text the word freedom to 202-410-4202, you get our free ebook, The Bulletproof Guide to Finding a Broker. Okay, Antoine, go ahead and tell the listeners a little bit about how you got started with all this real estate stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, I was in college. I borrowed $40,000 from my dad. It all started really a year before graduating. So I was coming up on graduating college. I didn't want to go work for somebody else after graduating. Went to a real estate seminar over a weekend, learned about flipping houses in California and what the numbers should look like. Then I realized that I didn't have enough money or even close to enough money to be able to do that. Went to my dad, kind of working with my dad on how we can flip houses in California. After about 6 months, quickly realized that, we didn't have the capital. My dad only had $40,000 that he really wanted to put into these investments, and it was impossible to do anything here with that. So I started networking every single day. I even moved my classes at college from 5 to 10 p.m. so I could network during the day with breakfast and lunches and cold calling and all that kind of stuff. Did my research, chose some markets out of state because that's through my networking. I realized that the only way for me to invest with 40 grand in real estate was going to be out of state. Couldn't do anything here in California. So chose some markets just through a lot of research, found some markets out of state, Memphis, Tennessee, Cleveland, Ohio, St. Louis, Birmingham, and started cold calling and trying to build a team. And finally, a couple months before graduating, found a house in Memphis for 35 grand, where the renovations were going to be like $5,000, something super, super small. And so I ended up buying that house in a couple months before graduating, renovated it, rented it out, then did a cash out refinance, pulled pretty much all the money out, and then gave my dad his money back. And I was like, hey, let me keep doing this after graduating. I have some sort of a process now. I have a contractor, realtor, property manager, title company. Like, let me try to figure this out. And if it doesn't work, like, I'll go apply for a job or do whatever. But I think we have something here. So after graduated in May, by December, I had 8 to 10 single family homes in Memphis that I had all BRRRR'd successfully. And then pretty much that $40,000 had been depleted. Because not every BRRRR goes exactly according to plan. Sometimes you have to leave in 10 grand or 5 grand or 20 grand, depending on how the appraisal comes back. And so people started then reaching out to us. They were like, hey, how do we invest in Memphis? How do we invest in real estate? All these people in California with 20, 30, 40 grand, they started reaching out to us as a family, like, how can we get started? And then light bulb kind of went off, or, hey, maybe we can sell properties in our portfolio and then take the profit from that to go buy more properties, and we can, sell properties to these people that are turnkey rental properties. And so that was in 2018. That kind of all started with the turnkey business, selling houses to friends and family. And that's kind of expanded to where we are now, where we're doing 10 to 20 houses a month in Memphis, Tennessee, and Cleveland, Ohio.
Wow. So there's a lot to unpack there, right? So aside from deal sourcing, You also talked about networking. You're talking about business building. You're talking about team building. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah.
So first of all, let's talk about the actual team itself out of state. I mean, doing it from California, doing it from anywhere for that matter. I mean, I know how tough it is to build a team locally, let
Yeah.
alone out of state. Like how do you put that together? Like how do you actually source the right contractors and the right people you can actually trust? Because as you know, I mean, I'm sure for many people listening too. I mean, it's tough. It's a tough world out there, especially in the world of real estate.
Yep, 100% agree, and that's the hardest thing. Like, I get people hitting me up now that want to do the same thing as me because I wrote a, like you said, I wrote a book about it. Like, have my own podcast where I try to help people do it, and they're just like, people are just not putting it. They're not playing the numbers, and so what I mean by that is how I built my team on the ground was by when I say I cold called every single property management company in those markets, I mean I cold called every single one and kept track and kept a list of it. When I say that to look for a realtor, I called 250 of them cold and asked them a variety of questions to see if they'd be interested in working with me. It's legit 250 people I cold called per market, not 20, not 10. So it takes time. There's no magic formula or magic sauce, and sometimes these people on the ground that you meet, they don't really know that they have the capabilities to even do what you have envisioned. So sometimes they just need somebody new and fresh to come in and be like, hey, you know you can be the property manager, you can be my realtor, write all my offers, and then you guys already have contractors you work with for the property management company. So how about we position things X, Y, and Z, and we can do 10 deals a month, and then their light bulb kind of goes off like, wow, I didn't really think about that. Like, you know, the guy who's doing the work orders at property management company can also do unit turns, can also do renovations for properties that don't need a ton of work done to them. So the answer is it just takes a lot of time, and it's a slow test, right? So there's no way to really know how somebody's going to act until you actually get that house under contract, actually take action.
Yeah.
So you can ask them a million questions, but you just got to take things slow and cast a wide net.
Well, I think part of it too, aside from hitting up 200 people or or whatever it is, a large number of people, the
Yeah.
brokers, for instance, you're also practicing what to say in a way that will pull them
Mhm.
in, right? Because if you sound like a newbie, you sound like
Yep.
you don't know what you're talking about. You sound like you can't close a deal. Chances are, no one's going to call you back, right?
Yep. Yep. 100%. And like knowing the language of real estate too, I think is big. Like we talked about this right before the podcast, like, the silly Californian called, right? And so like there's probably everybody out of state in these markets in the Midwest gets blown up by California investors. My team tells me all the time they've turned their phone off because they just keep blowing up, or change their phone number because their phone gets blown up by all these Californians. And they have no idea what they're talking about, and they all say the same thing. They all say, I want to burr and I want to buy something and be 70% all in of the value. Like they all say the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's you have to stand out now. I mean, a couple of years ago it was a little bit different. It wasn't, I don't think, as hot as it is now, but um yeah, really knowing what you're saying and getting the practice in, the repetition, to be clear and concise, and to kind of stand out from the crowd of people that are already hitting up those brokers.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's a big part of it too. I mean,
Yeah.
my God, it's one of those things that I mentioned to numerous people is that practicing the language of real estate. How do you spell NOI? Most people don't even know what NOI stands for. Net operating income, and I mean, things like that. And I'm not trying to sound disparaging to anybody or anything else like that.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
not the intent. But what I'm saying is, if you want to get those phone calls back, it's kind of like one of those things. I mean, you can't go in sound like a newbie because brokers don't really care. They all they care about is their commission check.
Yep.
Sorry,
Yep. Yep.
cold world out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is just for single family. So I learned a lot
Yeah,
too when I was trying to get into the multifamily space. And that's even like a harder nut to crack. So I was doing everything I could because I had done like probably 20 or 30 single families in Memphis when I first started. And then I was like, all right, like I want to do something bigger, and I was like, let me try to find an apartment building. So I again reached out to all now multifamily brokers. And then with those guys, because there's very few of them compared to the residential brokers. So there's probably like 20 or 30 in Memphis that are doing volume or doing anything. And so reaching out to those people was like, okay, now I got to get creative. Like, how do I show to these brokers that I am somebody who's going to close a deal? I have money in the bank. I'm not just kicking tires. I'm actually going to close. I have a team on the ground. I have a property manager. Like, I have all these things. And so getting creative with that too, where I was literally testing out, like A/B testing almost my emails and cold calls to these brokers. And it was, at some points I was even just taking screenshots of my bank account to show them like, hey, I'm different than other guys. I have cash in the bank. I need to spend it. Like, show me some deals, that I can get into. And this is who I'm going to use for property management, for insurance, for et cetera, to kind of, you know, stand
Grease
out
the
from the
skids.
crowd.
Yeah,
Yeah.
grease the skids and get that return call. And I'm assuming that worked, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it worked. But it took a long time too. That's the thing. You can't just send the email to 5 people and then hope it works. Like, that was consistently following up with brokers for 9 months straight before I got my first deal.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it too is diligence, right? Diligence. And it's funny. I was actually talking to a broker friend just today, and he was talking about how deals that I've actually closed, he's like, I called on those sellers like a year ago, and they said they weren't interested in selling. I'm like, well, how many times you call them? Well, just that
Yeah.
one time. That's the reason, man. You got to be diligent about it.
Yeah.
You have to build a rapport and give them a reason for them to talk to you, and you have to keep
Exactly.
reaching out to them. I mean,
Exactly.
it's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Being persistent and because also too, like, even in the wholesaling world, which is kind of what you're talking about, like contacting these sellers and sellers and sellers, you need to be on top of mind when eventually they're going to be like, oh, I want to sell my house. And so you need to be on top of mind. So yeah, you might have reached out the wrong day of the month. You might have reached out the wrong month. So you have to be consistent and constantly reaching out to these people in a way that doesn't seem too pushy or kind of push them over the edge to block you, kind of thing. So it's a finesse to get into those deals for sure.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So part of it is though, when you're getting into these new areas, these new markets, right?
Yeah.
You're using networking, and part of that is also persistence as well. Like because networking is hard to do, man. I mean, for many people, even social people, it could be somewhat tough to go and meet people over the phone and then establish a relationship that way. So how did you break through and figure that out? Like how were you able to find those partners, those out of state people to really help you really get things rolling?
Yeah. Again, I'm an introvert too, so I hate talking to people. I hate cold calling. Like, that was the last thing I wanted to do. Trust me, my first probably 100 cold calls were probably the worst thing ever. You can probably hear my voice shaking over the phone. No joke. Now I can do it all day long. So it takes practice. And when I first started, I even hired brought on a couple people and, like, as like interns at college, and I taught them how to cold call, because I was like, we need to just call more people. And you can hear it too. And just I think people did it for a week and then they just never showed up to the office space again that I had rented out because they were so scared of cold calling. So it's a common issue, just getting out of your comfort zone, cold calling. But again, I think what was my success was like you said, kind of being persistent and just playing the numbers. The first deal I ever got was actually not cold calling a broker, like a cold broker with no listings. It was actually calling listings that had just popped up that day, and then calling the agents on those deals. And I was like, hey, I saw your house on 123 Main Street. I just wanted to know if I know that I think it was listed for like 45 grand. And I was like, I know the property is probably worth like 60 grand after it's done. But what do you think it could rent out for if I cleaned up the unit? Oh, probably $750 a month. Okay, cool. How much renovation do you think it needs to get to that point, et cetera? And then on the phone, I said something like, okay, do you think we could get the price down? I'm going to need like some sort of price reduction. And so you could already tell by the way that I was speaking to the broker that I knew what the hell I was talking about. Because over the phone, I was literally running the numbers, had the Excel spreadsheet open. And I think that was the main caveat to me to kind of get that first deal and get in with that broker. And he was actually like a broker owner. He owned his own brokerage. He had his own construction company. He had his own property management company. And so he was kind of like just a great needle in the haystack that I had found. And there's these needles in the haystack in every single market in the US. It's just how are you going to find that person, and how long are you going to, and how much time are you going to spend to find that person who can help you do what you want to do?
Yeah, that's the tough part right now, especially in this market. I mean, even though we're in the midst of all this Corona stuff that's currently taking place, it's still the real estate market is still tight. I mean, it's still on fire. It's the larger deals, I will admit, are they're still moving, they're still trading. Financing is still a bit of an issue, but for some people anyway. But for
Yeah.
the most part, I mean, deals are still moving, and same thing with the smaller deals too. I think the smaller deals are still trading as well. So finding those needle in the haystack type scenario is
Yeah.
absolutely key. Now you did mention when you're doing the cold calling, you set up a team. Was it worth doing? Looking back, do you think you would have done that, or would you have done something else?
No, I wouldn't have. It was so hard to, because they were not getting paid. So it was kind of like a learning experience to kind of like
Oh,
internship kind of thing. And
yeah,
doing cold calling without any pay or anything like that was just a big waste of time. I eventually just, I think I tried to do it with like three different people. They all gave up within a week. And
yeah,
so it was partially probably my problem, my issue, just not training them that well. But it was, that's all I had for them. I was just like, hey, you want to get involved in this early? Like, and again, I only tried three people. Like, I could have tried 40 kids and done something like that and been a Wolf of Wall Street in at my university, but didn't end up going down that route.
Do you think it would work?
I think it would have worked. Yeah.
Huh, interesting.
Um, I think it would have worked if I just had done it a little bit more at scale and then given them some sort of incentive if they had found a deal or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't remember how I was paying them or what I was paying them for, and I don't think I was giving them school credit either. So I just would have had to figure out the payment side of things. It's just hard to pay them on the deal, like, oh, build this team and I'll pay. Like, how much do you pay somebody for finding a contractor or a realtor or somebody that wants to talk to you? So
Right.
it would have been a little bit more difficult if I was wholesaling, for example. Like, I think it would have made more sense. Like, then yeah, for sure, I could have hired 50 kids, and every deal you find or you get under contract, then yeah, sure, you'll make a commission on the property. But I was doing a different strategy at that time.
Interesting. So, but I think today now you're using like ringless voicemail at least to find passive investors, right? So
To
similar sort of strategy, sort of thing, I guess.
we're to find passive like the turnkey buyers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the turnkey buyers is mostly through Instagram
Okay.
and SEO and bigger pockets. So Instagram has played a huge role. I probably started posting right around 2017, 2018, a couple of months after I graduated college. Because if you go, there's like still like videos down there way at the bottom of me and my original apartment, like right after graduating, of me like, hey, I'm testing this or trying this, or like, this is what happened today. And it was like my like fourth deal or something. So it's kind of cool to see it all on video. But that's how I was gaining my first traffic. And then also, yeah, a lot of SEO, a lot of bigger pockets, networking one on one. I have like I have like a couple of bigger pockets, like banned accounts, because of how much I was messaging people or reaching out or replying to posts. They have a weird limit where you're only allowed to like reply to a certain number of posts in like a
Huh.
couple hours. I
Yeah.
know it's weird. I'm like, you want me to interact on your forum or not? I kept getting these banned accounts, but that was a big way for me to meet people in LA who wanted to invest in real estate, who had money, who had families, and they didn't have the time. And so I was kind of the perfect option for them. I would go to them, hey, I'm investing out of state. I do turnkey rental properties, X, Y, and Z. And then, a light bulb kind of clicked for them because many people don't know what turnkey is. And that's even an option, and it's within their budget of 20,000 bucks. They can buy one of these properties out of state.
Right. 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 But I think the key thing though is that you're interacting with people. You're getting in
Yeah,
front of them. You're selling them. And it's funny that this game, the whole real estate game, it's built on relationship and your ability to sell and market. I mean, it's those two things right there. I mean, it sounds to me like you started obviously still in school, you were able to put that together. But I think as long as even if someone right now is sitting in their mid 40s, if they're able to do the same sort of thing, that they'll find success, right?
yeah. I think it's even easier because I had like nothing, right? So like everybody I knew was in college. okay, you have like, I talked to like some people in the NFL too who wanted to invest in real estate. So they have their like sports circle. And so they're all making money, they have income, they have extra cash laying around, or somebody who works in tech or a consultant or something like that. So their network is people who already have capital and money in the bank, and they maybe are in the stock market, but they've not in real estate, and you can kind of convince them to do so. I was coming in as a college kid, and my network was broke kids in college who are still living at their parents' house. So like everybody I knew, I had to change my entire circle, right? So I had to kind of step into these other areas of society and go meet people who had full-time jobs, had money, had cash in the bank, were interested in real estate. So yeah, 100%. If somebody's 40, 50, 60 years old, you already have that network of people. You just have to show a proof of concept and prove that it works. And then you go and pitch or sell these people that you already know, that you already have a rapport with, on investing or partnering with you. So I think it's even easier than what I was doing
Yeah. Now,
in college.
what do you think though, if you're obviously a newbie or somewhat new starting off and you go and approach someone who's very, very experienced? And I know we talked a little bit
Yeah,
about, we talked about this, as far as the language of real estate, but no matter what, if you're doing it in person, some people can usually tell. I know I can, but
yeah,
how do you deal with the reaction? Because I'm sure that some, I mean, I'm very nice to people whenever I meet them, and I really encourage people to get into real estate. That's why we do the shows like this, right? Other
yeah,
people are not so nice. So,
yeah.
what?
No,
How did you overcome that kind of stuff? Because I imagine that when you're first coming up, and you would go tell your story to someone, they might have just shut you down. I would imagine, right?
yeah. So I was very picky on the people that I was meeting.
Mm,
And I was going into the meeting knowing who they were because I would read their Bigger Pockets profile. It would either say like, because on there it said like how many deals they had done. So I guess I was kind of cheating because I was able to see like their experience level. So I would go into the meeting knowing their experience level, and then I could control the conversation. So I would be like, if they had no experience, then okay, cool. I would just kind of give them value. So teach them everything I know, tell them everything that I'm doing. And then a week or two later, no sales pitch. A week or two later, I would email them and be like, hey, Billy, I have this deal. Do you want to partner up with me to flip this house? Or are you interested in buying this turnkey rental? We just added this to our portfolio. Do you want to buy it? I think this might fit for you. And so it was kind of just educating the people who didn't know much but had some capital that they wanted to invest, um, on what I was doing, um, and just educating them about how I did it and that kind of thing. And so I think I don't even know if I had very many meetings with people who were doing more than me or like more experience level at that time. Because first of all, it's very hard to find that on Bigger Pockets who people actually want to meet up with you. So that's one part of it.
yeah.
The second part of it is, if I did go to one of those meetings and I knew somebody had more experience, then instead it was me asking them questions, not educating them. Because I wouldn't go into the meeting and be like, yeah, I'm doing this, this, and this, and I'm still. So it was kind of more like a me learning from them kind of experience, and conversation that I was having.
Asking the right questions and
Yeah,
getting
yeah, yeah.
them to basically just educate you, and really share some of their experiences. I mean, that part is huge right there. It's
Yeah.
like similar to what we do on, I guess, on podcasts, right? Ask the person a question. Hey, tell me about that deal. I heard that you just closed a big deal or whatever. What was the toughest part? What was the scariest part of doing a deal like that?
Yeah.
It's funny. It boosts their ego and it gets them to talk to you, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's the thing. I mean, that's a simple trick for anybody listening, actually,
Yep.
where if you
100%.
engage them in that way, that could be very useful for you to really get them to talk
Yeah.
uh, about what they're working on, right?
Agree. Yeah, and I mean, even for me to figure out, so remember the seminar I went to was about like flipping houses in California.
Yeah.
So even to figure out the out of state thing was all through those Bigger Pockets meetings. So I must have been meeting people with people that were doing stuff out of state, and I just had like a list of questions like, how did you choose your market? How did you build your team out of state? How did you choose the neighborhood? How did you manage your contract? How do you pay your like all these questions. So it was, a learning experience for me. And then I would have 10 of those meetings with different people, even if they've done one or two deals out of state, just learning about all the ways they went from zero to one. And then I kind of took all of that information and I was like, okay, well, you know, kind of finding the line of where I can do it. Okay, I don't do what Tom did, but I'll do what Bill did about this
Mhm.
situation. And then kind of building my own path using all those different stories that I had collected.
Right, right. I mean, that's the thing, though. It's like for anybody listening, it's when you're trying to build a team, whether it's local or out of state. It's these these are the types of things you really have to really get right. It's
Yeah.
really the networking component is really big. So let's talk a little bit more about the current business now. So you have you have the burst set up. You said in Memphis, you have some in Cleveland. Which is your favorite market and why?
So my favorite market for the single family homes is probably Cleveland. My favorite market for the multifamily right now is Memphis, Tennessee. Like I said before, like I've been trying to find, I've been looking in both markets for multifamily, and I was able to buy 100 units in Memphis and 0 units in Cleveland, just because of where the properties were situated. So I was able to get a really nice up and coming B class neighborhood in Memphis, Tennessee for the apartment building. So that was great. And then because of that, all those properties I bought last year for the multifamily side, my contractor and property manager was kind of swamped managing, handling those. So then because of that, I've kind of diverted all my single family home attention to Cleveland, Ohio, for the last year or so. And we're invested in many different areas in Cleveland, Ohio, but mostly B and C class suburbs.
Nice. Now you mentioned property management. I mean, one of the biggest things, and I've said this before, I've said it on the show and I've said it on my live webinars and all that. It's easy getting into a deal. The hard part is operating it for 10 years straight profitably. That's
Yeah.
hard. It's very,
Yeah.
very hard. So now how do you mitigate risk and with property management? Like how do you make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing?
Yeah. And it is difficult. That's for sure. What we're doing now is because we have so much scale and volume, I'm able to go and talk to the owner of these property management companies. And kind of, it's more almost like a partnership where if there is an issue, I can bring it up to him. He fixes it immediately. Because if he doesn't, I'm pulling the plug. I'm moving my, like, imagine we're onboarding 10 new owners to their company every single month. So they have this guaranteed, houses under management, plus also 10 new clients every single, we're growing their business. These two property management companies have turned off their marketing because we are bringing so many clients to their company. They don't need to market anymore. They can hardly, they're trying to just handle our volume that we're bringing in and then all the referrals that come from that. So coming in with that amount of scale has kind of helped me, to make sure that they're doing what they're doing so that when problems do arise, they are taking action, they're handling it, and they're doing it the right way. And that's kind of part of the upfront conversation that I have with the owners of the property management companies. Like, hey, I have a turnkey company. I want to pass all my clients off to you, but here's what I'm expecting. If problems do arise, we need you to be open to it and fix the problem and help all our clients and treat our clients right and X, Y, and Z. And so having that all up front, again, everybody's going to say, yeah, sure, absolutely. But then you'll start to see very quickly once a couple of problems do arise, how do they handle those situations? A couple 2 years ago, so when I first started, I hired that first property management company in Memphis. 2 years later, I had to fire them because they didn't scale up with us. They weren't working together with us on managing all of our clients, making sure everything was going smoothly for our clients. And so we did have to fire them. And I've hired a new property management company and was very transparent. Here's what happened last time, and it's not going to happen again. I'll pass everything on to you guys, but I need you to, commit to me that we're going to make this thing right and build the right system out. So that's how I've been able to do it. And it's not something that is, you can do with a couple phone calls or an in-person meeting or a couple dinners. It takes them actually handling situations and handling problems to make it a successful partnership.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it is that just like you said, partnership. You really have to demonstrate that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. Because I remember when I first started out, my property manager did not believe anything I was telling them. It's like, I'm going to add X number of houses because I started off with single family homes.
Okay.
And 15, no, actually more than that, probably like 17 years ago at this point. And they just didn't believe me, because they get the same phone call all the time
Yeah.
so it's kind of like I had to be a little more hands-on than I wanted to make sure everything was done properly. But once they saw that I was for real, because I was buying the assets I was telling them I was buying and then handing it over to them,
Yep.
they're like, "Oh, okay, this guy's really doing what he says he's going to do,"
Uh-huh.
and that's a big part of it, integrity, right? For anybody listening, that's one great way of getting a good property manager on board. If you say, "Listen, Joe, I'm going to be buying 10 houses a month, or 5 houses, or whatever the goal is. That's the goal, and I'm going to hand them off to you. Can you promise me you're going to do a good job?" If Joe says yes but doesn't, then you get rid of him and find another
Yeah.
guy. But that's the thing. I mean, that's probably the only way for people starting off. Like when you're starting from zero and going to one,
Yeah.
you have to be dedicated to growing the business, though, to help them grow theirs. I think is what it comes down to, right?
100%. Yeah, and they want your business too, because then he's like, talking to the owner, he's like, of the property management company, he's like, he has to say yes. I mean, he's saving so much time and so much money. He can just focus on his business. He doesn't have to worry about sales or marketing. Like, we've got you all covered here. You don't have to worry about Facebook ads or Instagram ads or trying to find new clients. Like, we've got it all covered. Just do your job and do what you're supposed to do. We'll handle all this over here. And it's kind of like a win-win. So it's finding the win-win with those property management companies. And like you said too, that's a good point you bring up. Like, okay, you're doing your first deal. Like, how do you, for people that are listening, like, how do you build that relationship with the property management company? And um, it's like you said, you got to do what you say you're going to do. And it could just be buying a couple houses a month, and you may need to be a little bit more hands on, like you said. But if you want to scale it and build a real business out of it, I mean, you've got to put your money where your mouth is, for that person to listen to you. So yeah, you might be able to get on a phone call with the owner, but until you're doing what you say you're going to do, and put your money where your mouth is, he's not going to make any changes for somebody who has 3 or 4 houses in the 2,000 house portfolio.
It's funny. It reminds me, there was a guy that I knew, an ex-friend, and he made an introduction to a property manager. And I called this property manager like 8 times, and he would not return my phone call. A property manager. This is when I was first starting out. And I
Mhm.
called my friend, and I'm like, "Hey, dude, like, how come he's not returning my phone call? Can you make him return my phone call?" So, and once I got in front of him, I told him exactly what I was going to do. And fast forward to today, I still do business with him. I'm his biggest client. I just got another 300 units for him this week. I mean,
Wow.
I told him what I was going to do, and I'm doing it. Right. So
Wow.
yeah. So it turned out it's a great relationship, and his team is doing wonderful. And I think the biggest expectation as you continue scaling and growing your business, that team gets to know what you're about, and they already anticipate what you're going to say and how you're going to act and react to certain situations. And
Yep.
you almost want someone like that. And that part is huge. That part is huge.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and doing things right too, because like, for example, like one thing about our company compared to like a lot of the other turnkey guys out there is like, we want our clients to have a good experience. I know there's some other snakes out there who are just trying to sell it and take a profit and walk
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
A lot of the times, like, there's work orders that come a couple months after closing, or like a month after closing. So imagine you're my client, you buy a house from me. 2 days later, the HVAC blows out, or the roof caves in. Well, I can be like, see you later. Like, good luck with your property. You have like a $5,000-$10,000 bill. A lot of the times we have gone in and paid that bill for the client, been like, hey, sorry, this should have been handled during renovation, or sorry, this happened so soon. We don't want you to hit you with this burden. We'll take it. So we literally email with property management saying, hey, you know, bill Antoine Martel for that item. Don't bill the client. We copy them. We copy property management. And so property management already knows, like, wow, this guy is like, really in it for the long haul, really taking care of his clients. So now they're all thinking in that mentality, because, and they have our backs and protect us because they see that we're doing the right thing. They're not working with somebody that's just trying to take the money and run. Like, we're here for the long haul, and you know, if we have to lose money on a house, to protect our brand or reputation, we'll do that. So
You know what, man? I'll tell you, integrity is everything in this business. Everything in
yeah,
this business, man. I mean, if you say you're going to do something, then do it. If you put up earnest money, and you don't go through with the deal because it's your fault, don't go back and say, well, can I have half the earnest money back? Which, by the way, that's another thing that's happening right now. I'm serious. It's like, it's
Oh my
ridiculous.
God.
It's like, you put up the money, you can perform. Now you're asking for half. Why would I do that? No, we're not doing that.
Oh my God.
Ridiculousness, man.
Wow.
Ridiculous. Because what comes around goes around, and this world is the real estate world is very, very small. If you really want to get deals in the future,
Yeah.
don't start screwing people around or pretending you're a joker, because no one's going to call you back.
Yep. 100%. Yeah. Well, there was I think a year or two ago now, there was remember that big turnkey company that got hit really hard. So
yeah,
he's put a bad reputation in that word turnkey. So yeah.
No, I know who you're talking about. Yeah. I think I don't know if he's still in Puerto Rico or wherever he was, but he wasn't even in. Yeah, he left the country or something.
Idea, man. Yeah, and I saw just like, I don't know, I was scrolling on TikTok now, and a couple of days ago, and his video came up, and I'm like, this guy is still he's posting content, and I'm like, how are you even because people have no idea, especially in the TikTok world, like no idea what this guy is or who he is, and now he's still posting, and I was baffled to see him show up on my screen anymore. But
this business. But you know what though, if someone does their due diligence and does a quick Google search, they will see what's going on. So
imagine that.
Yeah. And obviously we can't say on a podcast who that individual is. If you know me, you can just message me and I'll tell you.
Don't want to give him more clout than he already has.
Exactly. All right, now Antoine. All right, so I know you've been through a lot of stuff already, right? And you're still building this business, but I have to imagine at some point someone gave you some bulletproof advice, or you came across some bulletproof advice. That person listening right now, what is that one piece of bulletproof advice that you would give them?
Yeah. So my piece of advice that I've noticed over the last couple of years, especially meeting a lot of people that wanted to invest, is choosing the right strategy that makes the most amount of sense for you. And so what I mean by that is, if you have, 20 grand in the bank and a family and 2 dogs and, 4 kids, and you're strapped on time and you have very little capital and you have a full-time job, going and building ground up construction apartment buildings in LA probably is not going to suit you and your resources and your cash and who you know. So invest in the thing that makes the most amount of sense for you today. So, that can be wholesaling, flipping houses, in-state or out-of-state, apartment buildings, investing in syndications. Write down all your resources and then all those different strategies and kind of just match up which strategy makes the most amount of sense for you today. It might be syndications or buying turnkey, and you may not want to do that long term, but getting in the game, I think, is the most important part, because once you're in the game, you can now go to the networking events. You can now go meet people and you have some rapport. You have done something in the space. Now people are more willing to listen to you. And also you'll have some skin and some money invested in the real estate world. So that's my advice is to go get started with the thing that matches your resources today. Don't wait for 4, 5, 6, 7 years because you're waiting to do that ground up development project when you haven't even bought a single family home yet.
That's excellent advice. I mean, I think many people realize that we're all running out of time. We have a finite amount of time on this planet. We got to make the most of it. Got to make the most of it. Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
All right, guys. Well, if you want to reach out to Antoine, you can reach him via his website at martelturnkey.com. Hope you got a lot of good insight, especially on team building, and really get you really in front of the right people to help those great deals happen for you. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the Bulletproof Cashflow podcast.